IB Nation, welcome back to the Irish Breakdown Podcast, giving you all a little bit of a recruiting extra podcast this week and every single day, actually, because I am live here in San Antonio, Texas for the 2024 All-American Bowl, which there are 4 participants, and we are here on day 2 of the 2024 All-American Bowl. Of course, on the east side, we have Mr. Kedren Young, star running back out of Lufkin, Texas. We also have Mr. Bryce Young, star defensive end out of Charlotte Christian in the state of North Carolina. Of course, the son of former Notre Dame great NFL Hall of Famer, Bryant Young. On the West team, somehow the West finagled the system and got Mr. Cam Williams, star wide receiver in the Chicago area, Glen Ellen, Illinois, Glenbard South. And these are all 2024 recruits, by the way. I think I said that. But yeah, just so we're on the same page for people that don't follow recruiting that well. Somehow, though, they have convinced themselves that Chicago is in the west side of the country. But regardless, Cam Williams on the west team, Kingston Viliamo Asa out of St. John Bosco in the state of California. Obviously, that is west. I agree there. No disagreement on my part there. So we had day 2, folks, and kind of the format of today, and I'm going to break it down player by player, because there's a lot of takeaways I have for day 2. A lot that you probably would have already had if you guys were at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So make sure you go sign up there. I also have a lot of free content up on the site, just kind of some practice reports, player interviews, some YouTube videos on there. A lot of good stuff. I feel like we're doing a pretty good job so far covering the event, if I do say so myself. But regardless, you should have all this information already before you even listen to this podcast or watch this YouTube video. But if you are here for the first time, just kind of getting a little bit of an update on the day, first part of today at 10 o'clock Central Time for about 2 hours, the East and the West side both had a single practice. So the East was at Trinity University Field today. The West team was in the Alamo Dome, so they kind of flipped because yesterday it was vice versa. And then in the afternoon, right around 2 o'clock Central, although actually got started a little bit earlier than that, they had a joint practice. So the East team and the West team were both in the same location. They were in the Alamo Dome. They got after a little bit. There were some one-on-ones. There was some inside run. There was a little bit of 7-on-7 action. There was team. There was a red zone period as well. They were getting after it. They were letting the pads pop a little bit today. Everybody was in full pads after only being in, well, the West team anyway. The part that I was at yesterday, they were just in helmets yesterday. But regardless, everybody was in full pads. Pads were popping. Competition was the name of today. So I want to start us off with who I saw early in the day. So the East team was the team that I saw the most of today. So I took in a full practice for the East, and then obviously I saw them during the joint practice. I want to start off by, and I saw a lot of clips on Twitter and people that I know that are down here as well that actually saw the East team in day 1. One of the big talks of the town so far as prospects or recruits that are really exciting people, is Bryce Young, who, again, defensive end, 2024, out of Charlotte Christian in the state of city of Charlotte in the state of North Carolina, son of NFL Hall of Famer, former Notre Dame great and college football Hall of Famer, Bryant Young, also a defensive lineman. And Bryce Young has been named by multiple platforms as a big winner through 2 days. And after seeing him live and in person, especially in the first practice, I agree vehemently. Yes, he has been fantastic. First, what is the thing that we all do in these all-star settings? The first thing we see is physically, how do these players look? Before they even take a snap, before they even run a drill, what do they look like? And when you're talking about 100 plus of the top players in the 2024 class all in one location, especially a lot of great defensive linemen like LJ McCray, who I'll talk about in a second, who's considered a 5-star by multiple platforms in going to the University of Florida. When you are able to stand out, it's huge for you, right? Because that means that you are physically in the upper tier of your class. And that means that usually if you have that type of body type, physical profile, athleticism, usually that means the upside is immense. And that's how I would best characterize what I saw today from Bryce Young. I knew that he was a large human. He listed 6'5.5", 245 pounds. I think he weighed in right around that same this week. But truly, and I was talking to someone about this on Twitter who saw a picture of him. You don't really appreciate how massive a young man this is until you're up close and personal with him and just kind of seeing him firsthand. There were two players that I would say defensive line wise look the part as far as year one contributors in college football right today, without any physical development, without the weight room, without whatever. They look the part. Of course, Bryce Young is one of them. The other one, like I mentioned before, is LJ McCray, who I think is going to the University of Florida. A little bit of a different body type. But what I would say about that comparison, and what I would say just overall, I don't think that I would trade Bryce Young's frame for any other defensive lineman that I saw today. He is long, he is powerful, and he's explosive. And he has a frame where 245, 250 pounds right now, I truly believe this kid could play 290. I do. I truly do. I know that's a huge jump. We're talking about 40 pounds, but we just saw last year where Armand Mukum was about 250, 255 during his senior year. And then all of a sudden, by the first game of the season, of the 2023 season, he's 280 pounds. Now, I'm not necessarily predicting Bryce to make that type of weight jump in year one or in one off season, I should say. But I think that he has a frame where he is going to be massive, like much bigger. Because although he is pretty densely put together in certain areas, he still kind of has like that basketball player frame right now, right? Like he's a little bit skinny in certain areas. And as he continues to mature his body, the kid's going to be a freak show, man. So I watched him and I love the frame. I love the athletic profile, the physical profile, I should say. The next step, though, is because he had a big weight gain, right? He had a big weight gain this past year, and obviously he had a great senior year, so it didn't seem to hurt his athleticism at all. And I saw him in person, and I was just like, this kid is a rare athlete for his size, right? 6'5 plus, 245 pounds, can easily hold a lot more weight. They were doing drills where they were asking them to play with a little bit of bend, change direction, really dip, and be able to just, run the arc at times. And Bryce Young looked as natural as anyone. I mean, honestly, he looked more natural than some much smaller defensive ends that were in attendance. The guys that are like true outside track winners. Bryce Young is going to be playing field end for Notre Dame, big ends, and maybe eventually inside, depending on how his body develops. Despite that, looked loose, athletic, and explosive, man. It was impressive to watch just what type of athlete Bryce Young is. And he showed to me as well, and I think that this is an underlying thing, because he had really great reps in the first practice. He had a couple nice reps in the second practice. He had a pass rush one-on-one where he won. He did a nice job when they were doing kind of the one-on-ones in the run game, where he was able to establish a good position at the point of attack and be able to, extend and be able to win outside of his frame and to be able to hold the edge and set the edge, in consequence. And that's all great. But the thing that really stuck out with me that I thought was awesome is in between every play or every drill and every rep, he was working on his technique off to the side. And no coach was helping him. No coach was telling him like, hey, Bryce, like take some more reps over there. You just looked over at him and he's working his hips. He's working his hand placement. He's working on different moves. Kid is a hard worker, man. And I think that that's pretty evident by watching his film. Like the kid's, his motor never stops. But I really thought it was cool because, there was a couple kids that were doing it, but not a ton. In between every rep, he was making more reps out of it, which I think long-term is going to be very beneficial for Bryce Young. So he has been a big winner for over the first 2 games, two days of All-American Bowl practice. A lot of great things to take away from what Bryce Young's doing down here in San Antonio. His teammates on the East squad is Kedren Young, star running back out of Lufkin, Texas. Pretty funny that both Youngs are on the same team. So this is my first time seeing Kedren in person. And I remember on National Signing Day, he was listed at 225 pounds. Well, I talked to Kedren about it, and he was like, yeah, I was 225, but I shed some weights to get ready for college, to kind of get just a little bit more explosive and that type of thing. Now he's down to 217 pounds. And this all-star event, I think, is really cool for me personally because I watch Kedren Young play and I'm like, as a runner, he's college ready. Like he has that big frame. He's 217 pounds. He's strong. He's got really good vision. Short area explosiveness is good. He's got every trait that you look at and say, that kid could come in day one and run the football on the college level easily. But the part that you don't see at Lufkin is how good of a pass receiver is this kid, right? Like you don't see it. I think he had 3 receptions as a senior. Like they just don't utilize him in the passing game. Their offensive their offensive initiative is give Kedren Young the ball as a ball carrier and let's try to win a football game. That's what Lufkin wants to do. And honestly, if I had Kedren Young, that would be my decisions as well. Like I just want to get that kid the football and let him flourish. But I wanted to see next level. Can you be more than an early down runner? Can you be more than an early down back? Can you be more than just the 1A to a platoon approach because your 1A can't be more than just a ball carrier? And I saw a lot of great things. I'll say this. There's room for improvement, obviously, which is true of every high school senior that's about to be a freshman, and especially early enrollees. When he's running routes, sometimes I think just kind of his aiming points, especially on option routes, is a little bit off. He doesn't really know how to attack defenders in the passing game. I also think like the feel for sitting down in zone and kind of throttling down, like those types of things, they're not there yet. They're not. But the traits that I saw today that I look at and say, Kedren Young could be a nice pass game weapon, at least, maybe plus pass game weapon, is one, he's very comfortable down the field. Like there were some plays where he was running wheel routes, and sometimes the further guys get down the field, the hairier the situation comes as far as being able to track the football and completing plays, especially for running backs. That wasn't the case for Kedren. Kedren looked comfortable working down the field. He also was a hands catcher. He was a very consistent player as far as catching the football. I think he had 1 drop on the day. Otherwise, he was clean all the way through. Every ball that was catchable made the reception. The other thing I love to see is they were working on this one drill where they basically were making him go down the line, flip his hips, come back down a different line to kind of showcase hip mobility and ability to change direction as a pass receiver. And Kedren looked good, man. I mean, he was in a group with Chauncey Bowens, who's going to Georgia, who's a bigger back, but then James Peoples, who's a little bit of a smaller back, going to Ohio State, and he's a really good player, by the way. He's like 5'11", 195, 200 pounds, and he's a little bit more of your space dude. Like, he is a very good athlete. And honestly, hip mobility wasn't far off from James Peoples. Like, it should never look the same because he's about 17, 20 pounds heavier than James Peoples, but he looked comfortable doing it. So projection to the next level, I think there's a big jump that Kedren Young can make as a pass receiver, as a passing game option, maybe run some option routes, some angle routes. I think that there's a upside as a route runner as well. So I'm excited about Kedren Young, man. I really am. And then you saw in the second practice, not a lot of reps as a receiver, obviously, in that because he's more of a traditional running back, but kid runs with good vision, good tempo, strong physical runner. He's going to be a really good one at Notre Dame. There's no doubt in my mind. The other two who are in the West teams, Kingston Villamoasa out of St. John Bosco, Glenbard South's Cam Williams. So I didn't see the first practice, so I can't comment on it. The one thing I will say about Cam Williams, and this will be a really quick breakdown, because unfortunately Cam was not able to participate in the second practice. The first practice, though, from clips I've seen, from people that I've talked to, from talking to Cam himself, he had a great practice, man. I mentioned the first day was a like torrential downpour, which limited the passing offense, but Cam was basically uncoverable in the first practice from what I heard. So he had a really good second practice after not a bad, I mean, like he had a good first practice as well, but it just wasn't like it wasn't a highlight reel practice because of obviously the weather and the situation there. So, but regardless, Cam has done really well with the opportunities he's done this week. He has lived up, in my opinion, to the 5-star status that I think that he currently holds. And I think other people think that he currently holds. This kid was going to be really good for the University of Notre Dame. And it's very possible that he'll be very good for Notre Dame in the 2024 season. He has that type of upside to him. Now, folks, if you listened to my breakdown yesterday or read any of my pieces kind of breaking down the Tuesday practices, you know that I was pretty high on what Kingston Villiamawasa did the first day. And that continued on day 2 of the All-American Bowl. It really did. Look, I have a declaration that I'm gonna make about Kingston in a second. But let's start out with what I saw in this second practice. One, the part of his game that I think is super underrated is the impact that he create in the passing game. You see him blitz a lot for St. John Bosco and have that crazy closing speed. That's awesome. But that is downhill centric, right? A lot of good run game guys are also good blitzers because they're really explosive getting downhill. I know that Kingston has that. What will he look like flipping his hips, getting back into the zone, being a zone dropper, like those types of things? And today, in the first day as well, he just looks comfortable, man. Like he just looks comfortable. For a Mike linebacker, a modern Mike, I think that he has a chance to be a very good pass coverage middle linebacker on the next level. Is he ever going to, be your best coverage linebacker on the team? Maybe not. But he doesn't have to be, right? Like in Notre Dame's system in a 4-2-5, your rover has to be the best one, and then your will has to be dang good as well because he's covering the backside of plays a lot where there's going to be some one-on-one coverage a lot and stuff leaking kind of back to the front side. So you don't need to be a stellar pass game coverage guy. But regardless, I think that Kingston has a chance to be a plus player in there. And I've seen as far as just the hip mobility, the fluidness, and more than anything, the reason that Kingston is so good just in general, outside of the physical and athletic profile he has, is he's really smart. He knows where to drop. He knows where the zone's supposed to be. He knows what's developing in front of him. He's a very smart football player. But the best part of Kingston Villiamawasa is always going to be, in my opinion, coming forward. There is an innate ability here. There's a big difference between being reactive and proactive. You guys have probably heard me talk about that a million times. Reactive is, I see this, now I'm going to do it. Now I'm going to run to it. Proactive is, I know it's coming, so I'm going to be in the right spot a little bit earlier than my reactive partner. That's basically what it comes down to. And Kingston is one of, actually, I'm going to make a claim here. I've only been doing this 2 years as far as evaluating high school prospects. I'm an NFL draft guy. That's where my bread and butter has been. But out of all the linebackers I've watched over the last 2 cycles now, 2023 and 2024, there is no linebacker who sees the game as well as Kingston Villiamawasa does. None. He is the most proactive and heady football player of any linebacker I've seen in the last 2 cycles, in my opinion, just of who I've seen. There's other great linebackers, guys. Sammy Brown was a guy Notre Dame was recruiting for a while. Peyton Pierce was a guy Notre Dame was recruiting for a while. Bodie Cahoon is committed and signed with the University of Notre Dame and had over 200 tackles this past year. You talk about the 2023 class with Drake Bowen and Preston Zinter and Jay Nosbury. Like, there's been a lot of really good linebackers on the board that I have watched. Kingston Villiamawasa, he is number one in terms of knowing what a offense is trying to do to him and being ahead of that curve. Incredible. Now, here's the second part to my claim. He's an early enrollee. Linebacker isn't necessarily a need for Notre Dame. It is more, just who's going to rise to the occasion. My claim, and I'm going to stick by this all preseason, spring ball, preseason, everything. Kingston Villiamawasa will start games this year at linebacker. At Mike, most likely. I truly believe that. He is a special football player, and he has showed it the first 2 days at the 2024 All-American Bowl. Folks, I'll be back tomorrow for day 3 of the All-American Bowl. Make sure, again, boards@irishbreakdown.com. Make sure you like this podcast, subscribe to the podcast, notification bells on the YouTube channel for every time I'm going to go live and every time we're going to go live as a collective here at the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Also, if you all can just, for the coverage, 5-star reviews are very much appreciated, as they always are, on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Ryan Roberts, Director of Recruiting here at irishbreakdown.com. I'll be back with you guys very soon on another update here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.